I am a guest speaker. I have nothing to do with this place. And so this is a great church, great people. I'm from New York City. So please come back. They're wonderful. And we will make it through this weekend as we always do. But let me welcome you. It's nice to have all of you here. For those of you that are not familiar with my other life, I live two lives. And usually when a preacher says that, that's not a good thing. So let me explain the difference between the two lives. I have this life. I actually didn't wear a tie tonight, just because I'm really trying to fit in to this kind of sloppy culture out here. I don't really know if I could ever do that, because I'm always the only one ever here that wears a tie. And I was threatened last year that if I wore one, I think I'll have to go back to it tomorrow morning just to irritate folks. You know how it is. But I have this life, my outside speaking life, my TV life, my writing books life, my teaching in university life, very churchy, spiritual, fundamental, temperamental life, churchy life. And then I have the life that I live back in New York City, which is basically in total opposition to this life. And then every week, I get to go from that life into this life, whatever this life is. Because this is, as much as New York and Brooklyn, where we live, is different from the rest of America, where you guys live here is very different from the rest of America, and it's extremely different from where I live. Extremely. So I get to once a year make the pilgrimage to the land of, I don't know exactly. El Cajon, yes. We'll just leave it at that. With folks who are just different, which is what people say about us that are New Yorkers. And so in the process of trying to communicate that, not always easy coming from a very different culture, which is like coming from another nation, really, and coming out here. And the upside is I've been coming here now for 16 years, so I understand you people. Not you people, but you people. I kind of got a better handle on things, and just, you know, I try to walk a little slower when I'm out here. I try to be calm a little bit more. So this is a good thing. This is good for me. But thank you. This church has been a great support of what we have done. I've been in New York now for 32 years, been in the ministry for 45, and it's been an interesting journey, to say the least. Of all the projects that we have done around the world, you guys have always been there. You've stepped up. If you remember, if you were here last year, we were working on the bus, the mobile kindergarten, which you guys, of course, helped to make happen. I thank you for that. It is in the finishing stages over there. You guys have played a major role in that. We'll be telling you a little bit later of what we're trying to work on between tonight and tomorrow. But I wanted to thank you. It's really easy for people to put something in a newsletter. It's not really personal enough for me. So thank you. Thank you for believing in what we're doing. We're averaging right now about 80,000 a week in Sunday school. It is the largest organization of its kind in the world. And you guys need to know you are a very big part of that. We are your representatives. When we go out, when we're on the field, we represent you. And I believe we represent you well. So thank you for allowing us to do that. We appreciate it very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to be doing 3 different messages, obviously. That's what I always do. Be 2 different ones again for the 2 services that I'll be doing in the morning. I will be at the back table after the service. There's a few things for those of you that aren't familiar with what we're doing at Metro. I think all of you got your calendar. You guys know this is something I've done for many, many years. And if you got your calendar, take it out for just a moment. If you have not filled out these prayer slips on the back in past years, or if you're new, or maybe just say, hey, I need more information, take a moment, fill this out. We send out emails. We don't inundate you with emails, but we do like to keep you up to date with what's going on. When things happen, which they do in New York very, very quickly. We have a little girl right now laying in the hospital. She's, I think, 8 years old. She caught a bullet right here in the top of the neck 2 weeks ago. It's lodged against her spinal column. They have not been able to remove it. So when things like this happen, whether it's in New York or in many of our places around the world, we try to shoot out an email to get you guys to pray, to get you to get your connect groups, your cell groups, and mobilize folks. It's very important. We've been trying to get 100,000 folks around the world to be a part of this prayer network. I believe we're at about 91,000 right now. So if you are not on that list, please take a minute right now, fill that out, and you can tear it off and give it to me. I will be at the back table for as long as I need to be. Please do not give it to an usher. Give it to me personally. I'd like to shake your hand. Thank you. This is a very big part, guys, of what we do. Some very unusual doors continue to open around the world to us. Our next 2 countries will be Haiti and it looks like Brazil. I'll be going down there in January. So as these nations continue to open, as the government continues to invite us, as these unusual doors swing open to us, I hope I'm old enough to know I can't do it without a network of folks praying for us. So that's the purpose of this. So take a minute now while I'm talking about the books to fill this out, give it to me afterwards. Please don't leave this in the auditorium. Take it home with you. Put it up for the remainder of this year as a reminder to pray. Lots going on, and I'll be sharing a lot more about that a little later in the service. But while you're filling out those prayer slips, the new book is an update, really, on the old one. Whose child is this? If I say something tonight that you go, boy, I'd like to know more about that and what those guys are doing. This really tells how Metro has become the largest Sunday school in the world today. It's updated with the international side of it. There's some other books back there. I don't write books because I have nothing better to do. I will say something on TV or in a meeting like this, and somebody will say, boy, you know, you need to put that in a book. So these books are basically compilations of things that I have picked up along the road of life. This one, the Teflon Rhino, if you haven't picked this up, it may be worth getting. I've always said if you're going to make it in life, you've got to have skin thick as a rhino made out of Teflon. Nothing sticks. Folks get way too offended. I offended somebody yesterday. Can you imagine that? Is that even possible? Well, apparently it was. In the condition that this country is in, the last thing we need is Christians with thin skin. We need to toughen up a little bit, folks. Toughen up a little bit. Does that make sense? We got a much bigger fish to fry than worry about somebody rolling their eyes at you when you walked in here, or me showing a video about cannibals. I just wanted to throw that out there because that happened 2 years ago. And for those, this was at Future Quest, and I did a video of these guys that were, these groups pulled dead people out of the Ganges and cut them up and eat them. So we had some pretty rare video footage of that. So I thought, me being who I am, and being the kind of person who likes to just inform people and irritate them at the same time. And if I can do both at once, it's a bonus. And I believe I was successful. So we had a couple of parents, they can sit there and watch World War Z, but they have a hard time dealing with reality in this part of the world. So reality bites, doesn't it? Yes, it does. And so I think all of us know that the real world is one of those places that you can't make up. And it's real problems, there are real issues, and they're going to be resolved by real Christians that aren't rattled. So that's why I do some of these books, and I'll be back there if you've got some questions. And I think we've got some of the DVDs as well, if you haven't picked those up. We have nice DVDs, we have not nice. Depends on which ones you want. And then, of course, over the years, you guys have sponsored so many of the kids. I thank you for that. I've got some kids tonight from Kenya that go to our Metro Sunday School. There on the first week we started Sunday School there, we had over 10,000 that showed up on the very first week. And so we give folks a chance to be a part of these kids' lives in a very unique way. Most of you know my story. When my mom left me on the corner, I sat there for 3 days, and the only one that stopped was a very ordinary Christian. Picked me up, sent me to a meeting like Future Quest, where I accepted Christ as a 12-year-old kid. That's what this represents. It's one person taking one kid that would not normally have someone to care for them and say, I maybe can't change a nation, can't change a village, but I can take one kid and invest in that one kid. That's what this is. And the reason why I am so passionate about this program, and now you know, is because I was this kid. I was the kid that was in that position of going one way or the other, as I told the kids last night. I was afforded an opportunity to make the right choice. Not every kid has those opportunities, and you guys know that. I happen to be one of those kids that even after my alcoholic mother was gone, a Christian man still stopped and gave me a shot at doing something with my life. And that's what this is. It's a $28 a month commitment. You can be as involved in the life of the child as you choose to be. So we will be around. All right? Good? Make sense? Great. I'll be around as long as I need to be this evening. And I'm believing that as life continues to unfold for these kids, whether it's the kids in New York, whether it's the kids that we deal with in Africa, there's just a lot, guys. You know that. There's a lot. And this is why we can do what we do. We can represent you. I'm crazy enough to do what I do. Most of you that have been around me know that. I have no problem wearing the bulletproof vest as I did in Somalia. Go out, carry the AR-15s like we had to do. I have no problem with that. That's a part of what I do. It's a very real part of what I do. But I can't do that. I can't go to the places where other ministries don't want to go unless we have guys like you that see the value of it, understand that you may never go, but you allow folks like me to go. So again, I say thank you. Thank you very much. I want to speak tonight in this first service. I want to pick up a little bit on what I was talking about with the kids last evening about vision. I get asked probably more often than any other question is, how have I been able to stay motivated, stay as excited as I've ever been about what I do after all these years? I had a heart attack 6 months ago. I'm good. It was one of those weird things that just kind of snuck up and bit me. I was doing okay, and then all of a sudden, you feel like, man, I don't feel good. And I thought maybe it was because I'd just eaten at some little dopey, greasy spoon restaurant. So I thought maybe that was it. And so I tried to walk it off, couldn't walk it off, and I was right across the street from Vanderbilt Hospital, which was a pretty good spot to be. Walked in there, I said, I don't feel good. They looked at me and they said, well, sit down. I said, okay. And so they ran some tests and they said, yeah, you'll be staying. I said, okay, I'm the guest. I'm not just visiting, I'm now the guest. And the next morning they chopped. You guys did that whole open heart thing. It's weird, right? You ever really know what that thing is? I kind of knew what it was, but they take like this saw, and I just like talking about it now because it just bothers people. And I'll show you the scar. You want to see the scar? No, you do not. Then somebody else will get mad because I'm showing you my scar. So they cut this thing open, and then they pull the breast thing apart, and it's kind of, I guess they have this little doohickey thing that holds you open. And then some guy that you don't know is now holding your heart in his hand. Now, I tried not to think about that too much because that's a little bit freaky and creepy. And then they wire you back together. They took an artery from here and just did the bypass, and they said, okay, you're all better. I didn't feel better when I walked out of the hospital. I didn't really feel right. It was a very painful process coming back to it. But it was interesting, I think. It's just one more scar added to my collection of scars. And it makes a great story post-op, But when you're in it, you're just in it, aren't you? It's not fun. Those kind of things never are. And yet, in the midst of, like when I got shot, I goes, oh man, he's going to be 65 soon, and now he's just had open heart surgery. That's it. Now he's going to retire. Retire and go where? Florida? Yeah, that's where all the preachers go. It's true. Yeah, it's true. If you're ever down in that Clearwater area down there, you can almost tell what denomination they are just by how they dress. No, you can't. Well, that guy's Baptist. This guy's Pentecostal. His legs are way too white. So you can kind of pick the different denominational folks out. No, I think those of you that know me, have heard me, you know there is no retirement here. This is it until it's it. And the thing that seems to surprise folks is how the vision is as strong, and I'm feeling maybe even stronger at this point in my life than I think it's ever been. How is that possible? How is it possible that after all these years, all the battles, all the struggles, after dealing with Christians for 45 years, because I'm not sure which is worse, the open heart, I don't know. The jury's still out. But I am more excited about what God's doing and my opportunity to be a part of that than I think I've ever been. That's why I was so excited last night. For those of you that were not here last night, it was a pretty exceptional evening. It really was. I didn't expect the response that we got at the end, and the Lord just really moved in a very unique way. It was great. It's a great time. And so those kinds of things, when you see that happening, you see the excitement. Dave and I were talking about it before we came in tonight. How do I want to ask this? How do you catch a vision of something that in and of itself has the innate capability to propel you to do things that even you never imagined, it's still hard for me to believe that I do what I do today. You'd think after all these years, I would kind of get used to being me. Maybe you'd never get used to being me. I don't know. And I try not to think about it too much, but how is that? How do you catch that? Some things are taught, other things are caught. You know that. I cannot teach compassion, but compassion can be learned. Let me say that again for the cheap seats. Compassion cannot be taught, but it can be learned. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that? I think that makes perfect sense. So, how is it that ordinary folks like you and I think we have established over years that I'm very ordinary. I'm painfully ordinary. Remember the story I told you guys of me throwing the garbage can at the guy's windshield when he was passing the bus, when I was picking up the kids, smashed his windshield in Jesus' name? I'm sure some of you must have remembered that. I think I told it here. I did, didn't I? Say something. Yeah, see? Now, most of you wouldn't do that. You're California people. So I understand that. That's what we do in New York. So I am just a very, very ordinary kind of person. Nothing special. I've never really heard an audible voice, which bothers people, because I think people think because I do what I do, that must somehow be the incentive. No, never have. So how is it that regular folks like us can catch something that moves us to do something that's way beyond your scope of understanding? I think they've got a video. Can you guys run the Zanita video for me? I always feel like I should be looking at somebody, but they're not. I want you guys to run this video. This is a gal that's in New York with us, and I think it pretty well says it all. Let's roll that tape, guys.
Every year, through Operation Holiday Hope, we have an opportunity to provide Christmas gifts for children all across New York City and the world. I was out visiting the kids on my Sunday school bus route, and they were so excited to know that they were going to get an opportunity to come to Sunday school and get their Christmas gifts. I remember one particular house. I noticed that the front door was wide open, and all of the windows were wide open. Mind you, this was the middle of December. As I approached the door and heard the kids playing and, yelled out, "Guys, it's time for Sunday school," I noticed that the youngest girl, who was 3, she didn't have on any clothes. All she had on was her underwear. And they were so excited. I came through the house and said, "Okay, well, where's Mom so we can get you guys ready to go, we're Sunday school and giving away Christmas gifts." And as we walked her out of the house, we couldn't find their mom. She was nowhere. I don't know if she'd left or how long she'd even been gone. We looked around for her clothes. We went through the different rooms of the house, and there weren't any clothes in the house for her. So we stopped, and the oldest brother, the 7-year-old, he kind of just tapped me and said, "You know what, Ms. Z? I want my little sister to be able to go and get her Christmas gift." So he took off his shirt, and he took off his pants, and he gave them to his little sister. He said, "I want her to go to Sunday school. I want her to be able to get a Christmas present." And he was so excited, and I remember thinking, but he doesn't even get to go, but he was just excited that he was going to get to send his little sister so that she could get her Christmas gift. So we put on the clothes. She didn't have any shoes. I picked her up and we carried her out to the bus. And she had an opportunity to go and hear about why we celebrate Christmas, about the gift that God gave us of his son Jesus, and that being the ultimate reason for Christmas. So as we went back home, I made sure that I packed him up a Christmas present as well. And we took it back and I dropped the kids off, and he was so happy that I remembered to bring him a Christmas present too. And that's really the reason why we do this. And that's the reason why you all, as our partners are so valuable to us. Thank you so much for all of your support and for truly helping us to bring these children that don't have any hope. We appreciate you and we need you. Please don't stop helping us to spread the message of Jesus Christ to those kids. Please call right now. All it takes is $10. That's all we need to give one of those children a gift for Christmas. Thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you.
I ran this clip in a couple of telethons I was doing at Christmas, because that's when this whole thing was happening. That's why she's making reference to the Christmas gifts. But I wanted you guys to hear her, not so much about the Christmas thing, because most of you know we do that every year and a half for years, but from her. A very ordinary gal that heard me speak in Tulsa several years ago, showed up, as so many folks do, and said, I saw something. What I needed you to catch in this was she walks into the house and she sees the situation, she sees the circumstances, and you have a choice. When you are close enough, when you get yourself in a position, when you allow yourself to be in a position to see something beyond yourself. And I'm going to be bringing a different staff member by the medium of video in each one of the services to get you to become a little more familiar with some of the folks that work with us. When you suddenly are exposed to something, you are forced to make some decisions that you would not normally have to make. That's why Bush made the one call from Air Force One to Atlanta, to the CNN headquarters, to cut the live feed at 9/11. I'm sure most of you remember that, at least you older ones. And in the middle of it, because they were running a live feed through CNN and watching the people jump out of the buildings, landing on the sidewalk. And then if you remember, that was suddenly cut. And Bush made the call. And the reason being, and I have a pretty good friend in the CIA, because I questioned him about it, and the whole reason is because most Americans can't deal with that. You would agree with that, I would assume. I think it's very difficult if you have not seen that and the result of that. But when you do see it, if you get close enough to something, close enough to the need, you see something that's different, out of your range of normalcy, then you are forced to make decisions that maybe up till that point you have never had to make. After witnessing 22 homicides up close over all these years, you don't get trained to witness a homicide. You guys know that. I'm not talking about showing up after the fact. I'm talking about being there. And when you watch this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details because I don't think it's necessary. You know where I live. You know what I do. But I want you to get your Bible open very quickly. Open to the book of Revelation. And Revelation chapter number 4. And I'm going to have the guys pull this up on the screen. Guys, I want you to pull up the 4th chapter and the 1st and 2nd verses, because we're talking about seeing beyond ourselves, catching something that forces us to reevaluate, to rethink, to ask, are we a part of that 1.5% of the world's population that does something significant with their life? Yes, that's what I said. Those are the latest statistics, that only 1.5% of the world's population ever does anything significant. Now, we could get into a semantical battle, if you would like, about what your definition of the word significant is. I'm not here to debate that with you, because One person's idea of significance may be different than someone else's. I understand that. But generally speaking, and these aren't from a Christian standpoint. This is from a non-Christian, just overall, looking at the world's population, 1.5%. That's a bit staggering to me. I don't know how that grabs you guys, but that's a bit staggering for me. So, having said that, guys, pull that up. Give me Revelation 4, 1 and 2. And after these things, I looked. Now, you know John is writing this. He was the only disciple that did not die a martyr's death. He was a young man that knew Christ. He was so young that apparently he hadn't learned to be phony yet, which was always a bonus. He was young enough to just be a worshiper. And he lived his life out there on the Isle of Patmos, as most of you know, as the writer of this book of Revelation. So he's saying, I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I heard, like the sound of a trumpet speaking, and he said, come up here. Watch this. Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after these things. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was standing in heaven, and one sitting on the throne. And the key here that struck me, and I think particularly in relationship to where we are. Thanks, guys, that'll work. To something that I wanted to communicate on this first of three services to you guys is he saw something after he came up. I don't know if you have ever noticed, and this is really the beginning of a study that I've been working on, so it will not be a complete exegesis, which I would normally do, but I think it's enough to draw your attention to this, because I think it's critical in light of the state of this nation and where we are and the issues that we're dealing with not only as a nation, but the issues that you're dealing with as a state, since now you know that your vote doesn't count, which is kind of interesting. And I'm not going to get into that. I could get into politics, and I could get very angry, but I'm not going to, because I decided I'm going to be nice tonight. As much as that's painful for me, and as hard as it is, I committed myself to being nice, and I'm just going to try to communicate and be calm. Suavecito. I'm going to try to be calm. Okay? So let me see how that works. It says, come up here, and I will show you something. Have you ever noticed that when a man or woman of God was getting ready to be, please don't miss this, to be positioned, to be used, to be set up, to do something beyond themselves, it seems like God had to bring them to a higher place, to reposition them, not necessarily just physically, but mentally, spiritually. They had to be my God. I was going to be nice, but I'm not now. Because somehow they had to be repositioned in some way, shape, form, because they can't see it from where they are. Are you with me? Maybe that's why so few people end up really fulfilling their potential in this life, because they have chosen to stay. Have you ever noticed that most folks will get to a certain level in their life and they stop? Okay? I asked a question to the staff in New York, and some of them gave me the dog look, which you know what the dog look is. Okay, you're talking to the dog, and the dog just goes. Okay, do not give me the dog look tonight. Just pay attention, because I'm going somewhere. So now I asked the staff, I said, when was the last time you did something for the first time? That may be a good question to ask all of you. See, because most of us, and it's particularly true the older we get, what happens? We get in a groove, don't we? We get in a groove. It's the name of the church I'm going to tomorrow night. No, it's the Grove. That's right. I keep wanting to say I'm speaking at the Groove. I'm at the Grove tomorrow night. But we get in this groove, in this routine, because you pretty much know what you're going to do tomorrow, don't you? Pretty much. Barring any unforeseen stupidity, you pretty much know how your day's going to play. And probably the day after that, and probably the day after that. Nothing wrong with that, but what does that do? That allows you to become, what's some good words we could use there? It becomes lackadaisical, lazy, predictable. Thank you, that's a good word. What else? Complacent. That's a good word. Just a knucklehead. Yeah, that's a good word. That's see. So it becomes, and to break. See, that's why one of the main reasons why folks get Alzheimer's is because their brain's not stimulated. See. And you're just kind of lumber through life. But if you are a student of the Word, you will notice that when someone is about to be used in a different way, when they are about to be pulled out of the norm, out of the predictability, out of the groove, they had to be brought to a higher place. And we see this here, and it says, come up hither. Come up here. That whole, I'm not going to talk to you in Greek, but it in the Greek, it's the word hode. It's come up to where I am. Not just moving someplace for the sake of moving, but come up to where the person that's trying to communicate to you is. Because if you are not there, you have been relegated to be right here. And if you are here, this is what you're going to see. You're at this level right here, which means what? It means your sight line is limited. It means you really can't see the future, so you have now been relegated to be stuck or confined or held hostage to the present. Does it make sense? Come up here. Come up to where I am. The Lord's speaking through John saying, come up here. Because if you're going to write about the future, if you're going to be prophetic, if you're going to write a prophetic word, if you're going to write about the future of the church, you can't do it from where you are. You can write about the present, you can write about the past, but if you're going to write about the future, the destiny of a nation, of a church, of an individual, of a family, you're going to have to come up to a higher place and see something that you have not seen before. That's where I believe we are in this nation. We could talk about John. We could talk about him being a worshiper. As I said, we could talk about his loving of Christ. I could spend the whole time on that. We don't have time, but I want to give you this. I want to give you a couple of these men that have become a prime example and see if it relates to you. I looked up Moses because I thought certainly there has to be something in the life of Moses that moved him from a stuttering person that was seemingly not really sold on himself, and yet most of you know the story as he comes up to Mount Sinai. See, he had to do what? He had to come up, didn't he? Because he was arguing with God. He didn't want to do what God wanted him to do, like most folks. He did not have the confidence that God could walk him through what he needed to be walked through to get the job done. God wanted him to be a pastor. Moses knew it was a bad job. He knew there was no way he could get several million Christians all going in the same direction. It's impossible. Nobody can do that. It's like herding cats. You can't do it. He was smart enough to know it. He said, I'm not doing this. This is a bad job. And so God had to be more forceful with him. And he gets up on Mount Sinai. Most of you know the story. And he sees a burning bush. The bush is speaking. I've seen a lot of strange things in my life, but I have not seen a burning bush. I wouldn't know what to do if I did, quite honestly. I've seen diapers thrown off the top of project buildings. I've seen things that I couldn't speak of in mixed audience, but I've not seen a burning bush. But notice here, even in the story, that Moses had to be moved to a different position, a higher place, to see, to even be open. Interesting, isn't it? I thought about Abraham. He's at the bottom of the mountain. He's got his friends. He's going to take the boy. You know the story. He's going to take the boy to offer the boy as a sacrifice. For those of you that know the story better, it says he left his friends at the bottom of the mountain. Before he went up to the top of Moriah, he leaves his friends at the bottom. As a matter of fact, it says he left them at the bottom of the mountain to guard the donkeys. That may be where you need to leave some of your friends. You need to leave them somewhere so they can guard the donkeys. Or whatever word you'd like to put in there. That's totally up to you. I'm leaving that as the option. This is the nicer Bill Wilson that's coming through tonight. Why did he leave his friends at the bottom? Why do you think? You know why? Because if those people would have went with him and they saw him take out the knife to kill the boy, somebody would have said, you can't do that. And they would have tried to stop him from doing what it was that God had put in his life to do. Be very, very careful who you spend time with. Be very, very careful who you share what God has put in you. Because nobody knows what God has put in you but you. Does that make sense? You don't know. They don't know. They think they know. And there will be people that will try to stop you from doing that thing. But he comes up to Mount Moriah. He comes to a higher place. Isn't that interesting? That you look person by person, experience by experience. And as they were getting ready to be set up, to be positioned, something had to change. What some of you think is a bad thing isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes the thing you think is your enemy actually turns out to be your friend. And sometimes what you think is your friend, yeah. And that's where discernment comes in, which we know. But he comes up to a whole new level. I was thinking about Noah, because I was making some notes, thinking about Noah. And the ark, I don't know if you've ever really thought about the ark much, outside of just the typical understanding of the Bible story. I mean, to live in a boat with animals like that for an extended period of time. I've been on a farm for a day. That was pretty much all I needed. I really didn't have a desire to stay after that. And very much, I guess we could, when people say, well, you know, the church is full of hypocrites, you know how people are. And they'll come up with all these reasons. You know, and the church, you know, it may not be the perfect place, and it may stink, but it's still the best boat afloat. The ark stunk, but it was the best boat afloat. And I think somehow we think that, well, boy, if I was in charge, but you're not. And yet when it came to land on top of Mount Ararat, suddenly, what's happened now? Suddenly things have changed. Things have changed. Do you see where I'm going with this thing? We have an opportunity, folks. And I don't want to ride this thing. I am an American. I love my nation. I told the kids the other night, I bleed red, white, and blue. I say that when I'm in this country. I say it when I'm in other countries. It doesn't matter where I am. But this country's in trouble. We're in trouble. If you don't know that, you need to know that. I would think that everybody recognizes that at this point. And what I'm saying is if we as believers are going to make an impact on a generation, if we are going to make an impact on the city, on this county, on this area, someone is going to have to come up to a higher place. We're going to have to be in a different position mentally, a different position spiritually, to be able to say, Lord, please allow me to be set up so I can see past the issues, past my own maybe shortcomings, and say, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? When Peter, James, and John went out to the Mount of Transfiguration, which was Mount Tabor, they were brought to a higher place. And their reaction was, as most of you know, was to be comfortable, to build 3 tabernacles there, to live there, to stay there. But they were brought up there for a reason, and Jesus challenges them and says, no, you're not going to stay here. I brought you here so you could see something different, so now you can go back down there and do something different. You see this differently now, and now you take, just like Zanita, you see something, and you have to decide, are you going to allow it to move you? If you're going to allow it to change you. He said, no, we're going to go back down to where the people are. Do you want to see something so badly? Do you want God to use you in a way that would even shock some of you? Is that yours? Because I don't know. Some of you I know pretty well just from being around you over the years. Many of you I do not. So I can't speak for you, so I'm not going to. But my question tonight, just through this prophetic note in Revelation, looking back at some of these biblical references, in every case, something had to happen to them. They were brought up to a place. What did that do for them? It's a good question, isn't it? Did it force them to think differently? I think in some cases, yeah. Was it just from seeing something that clicked with some of them? Maybe. I don't know. That's why I've asked people, I wish some of you would go with me to the garbage dump where I live with the kids in the Philippines. I don't do that, folks, just to do it. I don't do it so I can get out here and tell people I do it. I think most of you know me by now. That's not what I'm about. So why then, when I go there, why do I take the little cans of Beanie Weenies and the Sterno and live in the dump? You know why? Because I do this too much. Don't misunderstand what I'm going to say right now. I'm on TV too much. I speak at conferences too much. I'm probably around Christians probably more than I should be. You understand what I just said? Yeah. Why do you think I still drive the bus to pick up the kids in New York? Why do you think I still live there in the ghetto where we all live? Why do you think I do that? Why do you think I make them do that? Because when you're the one, now it's not a newspaper article, now it's not a video. Now it's, you pick up the kid whose mother was a prostitute, put him out at 6 a.m. in a snowstorm with t-shirts, with a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops on in a snowstorm while she's doing business in the apartment. And you are the one then that picks him up, and he doesn't have a coat, and his jaw is locking up. And what happens? It's now not just a story, is it? No, it's real. because you're seeing it for yourself. And when you're the one that sits in the garbage, when you're the one that's trying to feed a little baby, man, I mean, he wasn't this big, sitting in the middle of the garbage, eating garbage, and I'm trying to give him a half of my sandwich, and the guard comes over and says, you can't be, because, they don't want you around there. And I said, I'm feeding the kid. And the guy points a shotgun at me. And you wonder why I'm like I am? You wonder? And I stood up and I said, what are you going to do, shoot me? Go ahead, shoot me. If you're going to shoot me now. And if you don't, I'm going to feed this kid. Now what moves you? I'm just like you, folks. I am no different than you. I am painfully ordinary. Painfully. So what moves you then? Because it's somewhere down the road, I had to come to a different place. And I allowed myself to come and see something and to be a part of something and to get close to something. And what did it do? It moved me. And it still moves me. Why do you think I drive the bus? Because every week when I drive the bus, you know who I'm picking up, don't you? I'm picking up me. That was me. That was me. That was me. And you know what? Most of you don't know me well enough, but it's still me. It hasn't changed much. It just hasn't. He said, come up here to where I am, because I need you to see something different. I need you to get above where you are. I need you to get above the normalcy of what's going on in the religious community. If you're going to write about the future, the destiny of the church, you can't write about it from where you are. You're not going to change it from where you are. You got to be willing to come up and see it. Because when you see it, you'll never be the same. You speak differently. He speaks differently. She speaks differently. They think different. He had a really hard time when he first came back here, didn't you? I knew you would. He'd been with me for too long. And he came back here. I told you would. Yeah. He saw something. Don't blame him, blame me. He's a good boy. He did a great job. He's going to do a great job here. But he saw some things that he hadn't seen before. And because he saw things differently, it positioned him. It's moved him. I'm so proud of you. You've done a great job. But he saw it. He was forced to come up to a higher place. And when he caught it, he got it. What do you see? What do you want to do? What would you like to do? When was the last time you did something for the first time? Are you willing to be brought up? Father, thank you. I pray, Lord, that you'll help us. Help us to see tonight. Help us to see through a different set of eyes. And Lord, I pray in the quietness of the moment. And Lord, we look at these men and these women throughout the Word of God, and we just scratched the surface tonight. We just scratched the surface of people that seemingly did extraordinary things, and yet they were ordinary people as we have watched through the history of their lives. Just ordinary people. And yet they were brought to a higher place. They saw some things, and it didn't just stir them, it moved them. It moved them. They moved them. My prayer for this service and for the services tomorrow is very simple. So Lord, somehow break our hearts with the things that break your heart. Break our hearts with those things. God, let there be a holy dissatisfaction that comes across the house tonight. To not be satisfied with the place that we are, but to allow you to bring us to a higher place. That we are not just on the same level as we've been for all these years and seeing the same things and wondering why we get the same results, because we're doing the same things. Let us see. Let us see. I pray for young men and women to see different. I pray for some older folks in the house tonight to see different. To see it different. And to allow themselves. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of